Well, Alan, I want to talk a little bit about you because I have been told that you like to follow up Bell Geo surveys in person to validate identified targets, which has also included a trip to Indonesia, where you found a previously unmapped outcropping of igneous intrusive. So I've heard while you're out and about, you also like to look for petrified wood for fun, which I think is really, really cool. And so I've heard that in one of your wood expeditions, you found something that shaped some of your scientific theories regarding the mobilization of silica. So can you kind of share a little bit about that story and some of your theories?
So I'll start out with the Indonesia story. So one of our clients in Indonesia had some relevant questions regarding some of the shallow anomalies that we're seeing in our data set. This was on the island of Kalimantan along the edge of the Kute and Burrito basins. And this anomaly manifested itself along the Kute basin portion of the survey, but it was not visible in the Burrito side, which is, it was just a matter of a few kilometers to the south of the edge of the basin. You were no longer seeing that signal. Our data quality was the same on each side of the survey. So the client had a very relevant question that needed to be answered. What was going on to produce these anomalies? So I was able to book a flight to the island of Kalimantan I was actually in Jakarta at the time. So it's not very, it's a very short and inexpensive flight to get there. I was able to book a driver with a 4-wheel drive vehicle and GPS and have access to 2 days in the field to go check this area out. It turned out the GPS was somewhat useless because it was based off of existing paved roads. So it worked in the little town of Palangkaraya where I was staying, but once you got outside the city, it was just a blank map.
Oh, no.
So it actually turned out that an odometer in kilometers and images, Google Earth images of the existing logging trails was actually more useful than GPS. Well, I was actually expecting a GPS that was giving us latitudes and longitudes, but it was really just a simplified GPS for car navigation.
Gotcha.
Well, anyway,
You were expecting something a little more high tech.
I was, but I was able to make do with what I had. So a compass, looking at odometer readings carefully and knowing where to turn was actually quite a bit more helpful to getting to where I needed to go, as some of these areas were actually 200 kilometers away from the nearest cell phone signal. So I was without data and with only available aerial imagery and an area, a marked set of turns of how far I needed to go along each stretch of road and where to turn and which way to go. And it was somewhat challenging when you start to go into the interior of Kalimantan.
That's some Indiana Jones stuff you had going on there, Alan.
Well, not exactly. There was a bit of translation necessary. I had to ask the driver basically what the closest route would be, or if he knew the area. But we were able to actually get to the areas where I needed to go to answer the questions that I needed to have answered. So on the first day, we were able to go to a small town that was along the border of the two basins. And I was able to see on the north side of where the Kute Basin was, there were actually, there was a difference in cementation. The sand grains were actually held together by a hematite or iron oxide type cementation, which basically prevented it weathering very easily. And this produced a signal because it was slightly higher density than the rest of the sand around it that we were actually picking up from our planes. While it's on the southern side of the basin or the survey area along the Burrito Basin, the sand you could pick it up and it would just fall apart in between your fingers. It was like a sugar sand. So it was not held together very well and produced a relatively weak anomaly. So that answered the primary question. And then on the second day, I had another day to investigate other areas. I went to check out a magnetic anomaly, which it looked like a bullseye on the map. So I said, why not? Let's check this out. So we prepared, and it took most of the day to actually get to the site. That we actually had to make some adjustments because the aerial imagery was 30 years old, and most logging trails aren't used for 30 years. So we had to make some adjustments. And when we got within a kilometer of the site, I set out on foot to actually look at the road cut to see if there were any interesting changes in geology. I started noticing that what was once flat-lying geology or lightly tilted geology all of a sudden became steeply dipping. And as I approached the area, I was able to see a dark-looking stone outcrop. And I didn't think much of it because there are a lot of lignite or low-grade coals in the area. And seeing a darker colored rock really didn't trigger anything as far as something I should be looking for out of the ordinary. And maybe that's why this outcrop had not been previously described or mapped. But it stuck out like a sore thumb in our magnetic data. There was also a gravity gradiometry signal that wrapped around it. And upon approaching the site, I was able to see that there was a denuded or bare spot area extending into the jungle away from the road. And I was able to collect samples of this material to determine what type of igneous material it was. So that to me was quite exciting to find something that had, even in the client's detailed surface geology map, had never been described. And it was a way to ground truth our data to prove the resolution is actually increased. This was actually a 1 kilometer line space survey area. And for this feature to be, I think I measured it at the maximum, the outcrop was about 250 meters away from the road. It was actually, it could be like an iceberg, there was more buried at depth, but for it to be able to pick up an anomaly that was not expected to be very large, I thought it was quite significant to be able to go out and touch it.